We are following new developments in the Middle East today, including a change in policy from Saudi Arabia regarding its airspace. Riyadh now says that it will allow commercial flights between Israel and the United Arab Emirates to use Saudi airspace. Earlier this week, a U.S. delegation, which included President Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, joined Israeli officials on the first direct commercial passenger flight between Tel Aviv and Abu Dhabi. Last month, the two Mideast countries reached a historic peace deal brokered by the Trump administration. So Chrisina Ruffini is with us now to talk a little bit more about the latest on this deal and the recent visits that Trump administration officials have made to the Middle East. So Chrisina, let us start with Jared Kushner. He traveled from Israel to the UAE, but also with this trip, he traveled through Saudi airspace, which was significant, and he's meeting with other Arab leaders. What is the purpose of this trip? What is he hoping to accomplish?
So there's a few things that are going on. First of all, it's a bit of a victory lap, right? The Trump administration negotiated this deal, or says it negotiated this deal between the UAE and Israel, in which the United Arab Emirates would, for the first time, recognize Israel and have diplomatic relations with them. And part of that are these flights that are going to start between Jerusalem and Abu Dhabi, which is a big deal. Anybody who's flown around the region knows there's like this puzzle of countries who don't like each other that you have to fly around when you're, the Middle East is not that big geographically, but there's a lot of conflicting ideals. So when you're flying, there's a bunch of different airspaces you can't go through, and it makes it really hard. So what this does is, first of all, it cuts down travel time between those two destinations because you don't have to go around. You can go straight through Saudi. The other thing is it now allows not only people to come into Israel, but it allows access to big hubs like Doha and Abu Dhabi regularly for Israeli citizens, which, leaders of both countries have said will be great for tourism. So there's a bit of a victory lap for that. The other issue is the Trump administration, led by Jared Kushner, is trying to get other countries to sign on and to do what they've just done in UAE, which is to say, okay, we're going to normalize relations with Israel, but it's a little trickier than they're letting on.
So I want to ask you about some controversy related to a potential sale of F-35 jets between the U.S. and the UAE. What is the latest on this deal, and why is it controversial?
So as part of this, there was this kind of secret writer that said, look, if you agree to normalize relations, we're going to give you access to these advanced F-35 jets that Bahrain has really wanted. But the U.S. has a legal obligation to maintain Israel's military edge in the region. So they could only do this if it doesn't threaten Israel. This was part of the deal allegedly, but then after it came out, different parties in Israel from both sides started saying, hey, we don't support this. How can you let a Gulf country have these fighter jets? It's going to be a threat to us. And now there was this meeting where the leaders of Bahrain were supposed to go to Israel. It was canceled. I asked senior State Department officials about that. They said they couldn't comment on any specific meeting, but this is all fine. Everything is going well. The deal is still moving forward, and there's nothing to worry about with the sale of jets or any other issues that might unravel this deal.
I don't know if it's happening sort of across the board. I'm here. You're getting a little bit warped there. We're going to keep asking you some questions though while I have you here.
I've got some pretty bad audio feedback. If I don't speak to you, it's because I can't hear you.
No, good. I got you loud and clear. I got you loud and clear now. All right, so we will soldier on. Many people were aware of the fact that the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, was traveling last week. We know because there's a big brouhaha about him addressing the Republican convention from Israel. But he actually visited Middle Eastern and Northern African countries. His whole push was to encourage countries to establish ties with Israel. How did that go over? What was the outcome of that trip?
There was no tangible work product from this trip, other than possibly he got to stand in Israel and make a lovely speech to the RNC, which he was asked about this morning in his press briefing. Look, in Sudan, they're trying to get countries around the region, especially these countries who have not historically recognized Israel, to say, okay, we're going to normalize relations, because that would be a big deal. In countries like Sudan, which are desperate for any kind of economic investment, it seems a little bit more likely because there is something they really could get out of it and something they need. They desperately need help from the U.S. and anyone who's going to help them get out of the financial and political turmoil they're in right now. So this message might be a little easier received in places like Sudan, although they didn't leave with any kind of an agreement. than other Gulf countries like Bahrain and other countries who have said, look, we support a Palestinian state. We want a two-state solution. That's not what the Trump administration is advocating. And until we get on that same page, this is a non-starter for us.
All right. Chrisina Ruffini, thank you so much.
Thank you.